Jack Spade back here with you, High Noon Leatherworks, for another leather adventure. And today we're going to do a quick little sheath for my Hookaroon, or my Hookaroon, depending on what you want to call it. And this is a firewood cutting tool. And it came with a plastic cover on it that not too crazy about. It doesn't fit very well, but it's a nice tool, and I want to make a leather sheath to protect it and to protect me because it's very sharp. It has a very sharp point on it. So I'm going to make a quick sheath to put on that tool. You can do this with an axe, a hatchet, any sharp bladed tool or pointed tool. And I'm not going to do any sewing or stitching, so I'm going to use rivets, so it'll be a little quicker process. So come on in and let's get started. Alright, we've got the overhead shot on today, and I've got me some poster board here to make a pattern off of my Hookaroon tool. And I want to make this very simple, very quick. And what I'm going to do, my plan is to make a pattern to where this folds over, the leather folds over this way, over the actual blade itself. Then I can do my rivets here and have it come down to where it's protecting the point, and then this side over here will fold over, and then we'll have a snap or two on this end, and that's what's going to hold it on there. So you have to unsnap it in order to get it off. That's the plan. So the first thing I want to do is go ahead and I'm going to trace this out a little bit, and it's not super critical because it's not going to be the actual lines that I end up using, because I have to add some material to make sure it's big enough. But that's the outline. Then I want to take a look at this piece that folds over and is going to snap here, and I don't want this hanging way over on this end, so I'm going to contour that a little bit with the handle and just put a little contour on that edge so that it's not square. So let me put that back down and take a look at that, see what that looks like. Yeah, that'll be good. So then on this side, I'm going to fold this side over this way, like so. So I want to, when I have this folded over to snap, this is actually going to follow the handle. So I'll just draw a light line on there so I can see it on the other side, and then I'll just sketch that real rough over to the top of the handle here. That'll give me an idea where I want that to end. and then I'll just make that edge or that corner a little rounded. And then I can, as I look at that on this side, I can kind of sketch that in a little darker. Same way with this side over here. Once I kind of get that where I want it, fold it over and I kind of dry fit that and look at it. Then, remember, I want this side to fold over. So I'm going to take it from where I stopped my line coming this direction, and I'm going to take it this way toward the top. And I'm just lightly just sketching a line to give me an idea of what that's going to look like when I fold that over. And it looks like I went just a little too far, so I'm going to come back about a ½ an inch on the top and then sketch that again. Look at it again. And that looks pretty good. So I'll darken that line in. And again, I will fold that over, give me an idea. You got to remember that my leather is going to be thicker than my pattern material. So as I fold that over, I kind of have to allow for that. And then I'll make my mark here. Bring that around to this edge, and I'll do the same thing. I'm going to sketch it down a little bit just so I can see on the other side where is that gonna, and I don't want it hanging over my handle necessarily, so I'm gonna bring that back about 3/16 of an inch away from that first sketch line. And then I'm going to hold that, and while I have my pattern material and my tool, I'm just going to go with my thumb here. I'm going to press down on the top and the bottom of that tool, and that's going to give me my indentation or my line to where I know where to draw my line for my pattern. Now, that's not going to be my cut line because I have to allow for room for my rivets. So I'm going to fold that over again, double check it. And then I can remove my tool out of the way, make sure I'm not leaving any marks on there that I don't want. Definitely don't want this mark, so I'll put X's on that, and this mark doesn't mean anything. That's just where I did my initial outline. So this needs to come around. So that when that folds over, it's got some backing here on the back side of the handle also. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to set that tool aside, and I'm going to take my pattern and finalize a couple of lines here where I didn't have a mark. Then on this side, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make an extra amount that's going to cover for the space where I'm going to put my rivets. So my rivets are approximately, I believe they're right at 1/4 inch. Let me measure one real quick so I can make sure. They're 3/8 of an inch wide. So I have to allow for that. So I'm going to come out 3/8 would be the measurement of the rivet itself. Give 1/8 of an inch on each side. So that's going to take me up to about 5/8. And I need to allow for my leather folding over. So I'm just going to go ahead and go 3/4 out from that line, because I can always cut more off, but I can't add more. So I have to be careful with how much I'm going to cut off of here. So I'm just going to follow that line and mark it at 3/4 of an inch, several places. And then I will just connect those dots or dashes. And as that folds over, I want to make sure I come down far enough to cover that point. I definitely want that point inside. That's the whole idea, is to protect with that point. So I want to make sure I come down far enough. Again, I can always take my leather and cut more off, but I can't add any more to it. So I'm going to leave it there. I'll cut this out, fold it over, then I'll cut this side out so that it matches perfectly on my pattern. So I don't want to cut any of this side yet. So I'll mark that. So I can cut all the way up to here, and I can cut all of this out. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this down and get rid of this excess here out of my way. I can go ahead and start on this end. And again, those marks are not perfect by any means, but I can always clean those up on my pattern before I transfer that to my leather. And I'm just trying to get it nice and close here. So I'll get that out of the way. I come over and do this side. Remove that. I probably want to go ahead and round these corners just a little bit. I don't want a pointed edge necessarily. I can go ahead and cut this a little bit. I'm not going to cut this until I make my line on there, on the other side. So let's go ahead and fold that over where we had it folded over for the tool. And I can take my pencil and I'm just going to follow that line from the other side, and that follows this edge. So now I can cut that up, and I want to follow right on that line so that it matches the other side. And I'm just going to follow through and cut all the way out to the edge and get rid of that also. And that'll tell me, or give me a really good idea, how far out this side that I want to go with my rivets. It will be kind of straight at the top and then riveted here at the bottom because the end of this tool curves. You can see how the end of it curves or has a hook on it. That kind of where it gets its name, the Hookaroon. So I want to make sure that I leave plenty of leather here, but I don't necessarily want that to be just a square cut off edge. So I'm going to go around the end here and kind of make that rounded. So that it follows the contour of the tool a little bit. And then come back this way to where I have my measurements. So I can go ahead and cut that out. And I am cutting through both thicknesses now of my pattern material or my poster board, so I can set that aside. There's basically my pattern. I want to round this corner off. I don't want to leave that a sharp edge. Got these corners rounded off. That should complete my pattern. Now I can take my tool again, lay it back on my pattern, fold it over. There's where my rivets are going to go, and I can measure those out and mark them. And then this is where it's going to fold over and actually have snaps. So I can go ahead and mark my snaps. I'll put one here, and I'll put one here. So I'll have two of them there. The rest of this will be riveted. So you'll snap this, pull the tool out, then when you want to put it back up, you slide the tool inside the riveted part down here, and then snap it closed so that it can't come out. So that should keep everything from coming out, because it will be riveted here. So it won't slide this direction unless you unsnap it and slide it out. So the next step is I want to make my rivet marks. Where am I going to place my rivets? Well, I'll take my ruler and I'm going to start at 3/4 of an inch from the end down here, and that's where my first rivet's going to be. That's going to be almost right at the point. Then I'm going to place my rivets 1 inch apart. So I'm just going to make reference marks at 1 inch. That brings me down to where it curves around at this end, and that puts one right here. So I've got one every 1 inch from my first mark at 3/4 of an inch. So I'm going to take my poly cutting board and my small punch. I'm going to clean the leather out of it since I'm doing poster board material. Make sure that punch is clear. And then fold that over, and I'm going to punch through both pieces at the same time. So that'll give me my marks on my pattern for my rivet holes on both sides of my pattern. And when I fold that over, they match up perfect because I did them at the same time. Now on this side, I'm going to double check, put the tool back in there, and double check on these. And that will, when I put that rivet in that corner right there, that's really going to snug that down and pull that leather over. So I am going to want to make sure I have that tool all the way up to the top. And I'm going to change the location of this first one just a little bit so I'm not too far out to the side. And I'm going to mark it very, very heavy with my pencil so that it goes through to the other side of the poster board. That way I can see where to punch on this side. So that my holes line up. So I'll come back on this side, punch for my snap, and then I can punch the inside so they line up. You can see that poly cutting board does a really nice job when you're doing your punching. So I'll set that aside. Got my pattern ready to cut my leather. So let's do that next. Go ahead and get me an ink pen. I like to transfer and I'm going to look and see what the best way to do this is. It looks like probably this way is where I'm going to get the most use out of my leather. Now you can see I've got this set up now where I'm laying that on the finished side. If I do that, it's going to be backwards. So I won't have my finished side on the outside. It'll be on the inside. So what I can do is I can flip this over and use my pattern like this, and then when I flip it over, it'll be the correct side of the leather facing out. So I'm just gonna hold that down. Trace around the outside of the pattern, making sure the pattern does not move. And again, it does help if you're ambidextrous and can change to your right hand if you're left-handed, or vice versa. And then I'll mark my holes for my rivets so that they match up, and mark my holes for my snaps. I can go ahead and cut away all this excess leather that I don't need in the way while I'm cutting out from my pattern, my finished piece. And then I can remove that out of my way so I don't have to fight with that. Now I'm going to flip my knife blade so I have a fresh cutting edge. And go ahead and start cutting out my leather on my pattern marks that I just put on there with my pen. Remove that. Then I'm going to come around. Remember, I put a little bit of a round edge on that, but I'll just come across, cut straight, then do my round edge as I come around that corner, and just keep removing that out of my way. Then I can go back to cutting my longer straight lines, get down to this sharp corner, then I can turn around and go back the opposite direction so that I get a nice cut right there, right into that corner. Then I can remove that, get that out of the way, come around this rounded edge, continue on my mark. This is some pretty thick leather, so it's definitely going to be thick enough to protect you from a pointy edge of an axe or a hatchet, in this case the Hookaroon, because I want to carry this around with me in the woods but I don't want to accidentally stick myself with it while I'm carrying it around. So, and like I said, it did come with a plastic guard, I guess you'd call it, but it doesn't fit very well, and I could see losing that real easy. Now these inside corners, a little more difficult than the outside corners. I like to cut both directions, then turn it around if I can. That way I get a good sharp inside corner, and then I can start cutting again and continue that cut. Then I get to my outside corner again. Now I'm going to continue toward my last inside corner, and I don't want to go all the way to the mark, the end of the mark, because my blade will, as it's angled, so my blade will actually continue to cut. So I don't want to do that, or I'll cut my leather too far in. So I want to make sure I turn it around and start my cut the other direction from the inside corner out. Then I can finish this outside corner, and that's it. Now my leather's cut out, and I can go ahead and punch my holes for my rivets and my snaps. Again, I get out my cutting board. And it's like anything else. With this, the more you practice at it, the more you do it, you know how many times to hit it, how hard to hit it, the more you use it. Looks like I missed one on my pattern. I did miss one on my pattern. Good thing I caught that. I'd have been missing a hole. So just throw my pattern on there. Remark the one I missed. And then come around and get my holes for my snaps. And I can get my cutting board out of the way, put my punch up, my mallet. You can see this leather has been rolled up, so it's got a curve to it. And once I straighten that out, it'll be much easier for me to work with when I do my beveling and my snaps and everything. Now, I am not going to dye this. I am not going to burnish the edges. I am going to give it a quick beveling, just because I don't want that hard, sharp edge. So I'll burnish my beveling tool, get it nice and polished. And this will also take any of that inked line that's left from transferring my pattern. It'll take that off of there. Noticed I switched directions when I got to that inside, sharp inside corner, so I can bevel toward the inside corner. And then I'll continue from the outside corner around. And again, the sharper your beveling tool is, the better bevel you're going to get. It's going to be so much smoother. You don't have to push and dig into the leather. It'll just smoothly go around the corners. And just peel that right off of there. Alright, so that's it. That's all I'm doing. I'm going to leave this rough. I mean, it's a wood cutting tool for firewood, so I'm not too concerned about how good it looks or whatever. I may put a little bit of protective sheen on it or something like that, just to keep the leather natural color and keep in case it's out in the weather, but I can't foresee me leaving this out in the weather at all. So the next thing I want to do is I want to fold this over and put in my rivets. And again, this is really thick leather. I'm going to say it's probably 10 ounce. It's heavy. I make holsters and things like that out of it. Knife sheaths. So it's pretty heavy. I could wet that and it would make that fold over much better, and I may need to wet it a little bit to wet form or let it stretch. When I put the tool in there, we'll have to wait and see. So I'm going to go ahead and get my anvil and my tool for my rivets. And I'm going to put my rivet through the back side, set it on my anvil, put the top part of it in, I normally give it 3 good smacks. Find me another one, and these I believe are 3/8 rivets. Put my top on, make sure I'm on my anvil. 3 good smacks, make sure it's good and tight. And again, I'm going in through the back side, putting my cap on, put my setter tool on top, and again, it just looks nicer. I mean, it's for a tool that's going to be out in the woods, but it just looks nicer if you have those rivets spaced perfectly apart. That's why I do measure those and just don't eyeball them. my last rivet in there. And we can go ahead and kind of dry fit that. I'm going to say I may need to, put a little bit of water on that to wet form to get that to fit all the way in there. But I tell you what, that fits really nice. And if you pull this apart at the end, you can actually see the blade in there, but it's back in there a good 1/2 inch. So it's definitely going to protect. We'll double check our positioning on our snaps. See how close we are on those. It looks like we're in good shape on those too. So that's what it'll look like when we get our snaps on there. We can pull the tool out, fits nice and snug. And then let me get my snaps. I went with silver because that's the only color of rivets that I had, so I wanted those to match. So I need 2 males, 2 female ends. I'm going to put my female ends over here, my male ends here. So I'll flip my anvil over. Put my backer in. Put the flat part of my anvil on there. I'm going to put my male end on here. Get my snap setter tool. Give it 3 good whacks. And then I'll come over and do the second one. I'm going to do it the same way. I'll put my backer in there. Make sure it's on top of my anvil. I'll put my male snap. Give it 3 good whacks, nice and tight. And then I need to make sure I kind of look and see how I don't want to put this in backwards. So I'll put my front of the snap on there, put my female end on, and then I flip my anvil over so that the cupped part won't damage my snap. Give it 3 good whacks. Make sure it's tight. Again, put the snap through, put the female end on, put it on the cupped part of the anvil. 3 good whacks, nice and tight. Then let's double check it. Again, this is good stiff leather. That's awful close to that bend right there, so I'm going to have to really push down on that to get that to snap the first time. There we go, it wasn't lined up. Once you get that to snap in there the first time, there we go, then it does pretty good. So there's the finished piece with the snaps and the rivets. There's the back. Let's go ahead and see if we can dry fit this without putting any moisture on the leather to stretch it. So we'll put the Hookaroon in point first, push it down in there, pull the top part with the snaps over, and again, this leather's so thick it's going to take a few times before it stretches out any. And you could stretch it out with some, I'm going to put that one in a second. You could stretch it out some with some water easily. But if I just keep pulling on it, I think I can get it far enough to where it'll snap in. So it fits super nice and tight. So that thing is not going anywhere. It's not coming off, it's not shaking, it's not going to accidentally fall off in the woods. This doesn't have any leather around it, so I saved quite a bit there, but it's not going to come off because of the hook part. So there's no way it's going to slide off this way. Good and tight. But if I unsnap it, open it up, it pulls right out. Nice and tight, nice tight fit, but yet does allow me to keep those snaps tight. And as that stays on there, that will conform to the shape. That turned out really nice. So there's a fairly quick way to make you a pattern off of any tool, whether this is a Hookaroon, Pickaroon. You could use it for a hatchet, you could use it for an axe, a machete, any type of tool you want to carry around in the woods or on your tractor, and you're trying to make sure you're protecting your tool so it not only from hurting yourself or someone else, but also if it fell off of the tractor or whatever, you're side by side, and you're not going to damage the tool either. So it turned out awesome. I'm real happy with it. No stitching. I did not dye it, but I will put a protective coating on it before I take it out in the woods. And all I used was rivets and a couple of snaps. And this was real time, so that's how long it took to do it from start to finish. So I appreciate you coming along. Please come back next week. Check out the next video. We'll be doing a different project. So please, like I always say, like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.